It's your old pal Keith from wavetables.lol. That's wavetables.lol, home of KRC Mathwaves, the world's largest collection of wavetables, single-cycle waveforms, and even some samples, not these ones, but even some samples for all sorts of modern synthesizers, including our new friend Omnisphere 3. Now, Omnisphere 3 came out about a week ago, and about a week ago, I did my very long overview, about 90-minute overview of Omnisphere 3, which was a combination of an appreciation of Omnisphere in general, and about the history of Omnisphere, and then a close look at the synthesizer architecture. Now, there were a few things that I omitted because, you know, friend, you forgot to remind me to talk about the signal path setting. So I'm almost sure to get around to that today. But the real topic of our discussion, sorry, I'm fondling my drink. Delicious. It's cocktail hour. So the real purpose of our conversation today is to talk about something that you don't know about Omnisphere. So you probably know that you can import your own samples into Omnisphere, but then they will just be like a single sample sound source. But did you know that you can make user multi-samples in Omnisphere? That's what we're going to get to today. And we're actually hearing a user multi-sample right now. So you'll see that the patch I have open, Maurice versus 10cc, has two sound sources in it, both of which are multi-samples. The first one is, let's just solo layer A here. The first one is multi-samples of Earth, Wind & Fire vocalist, the dearly departed Maurice White. From a sound set that Ensoniq did many years ago. You can still get these samples. I will have a link in the description to where you can buy them commercially, because there is a company that still has the licenses to all the EMU and Ensoniq sample libraries, including versions that are much higher resolution than was ever put into an EMU sampler or rompler. So this is kind of cool, right? The other sound source that we have in here is a sample of... You can't hear it very well here because I've got it very effectified. But these are the original backing track vocals from 10cc's I'm Not in Love, which we'll talk about a little bit because it's such an interesting sound, along the way as we discover how to do... Here we go. And you can hear quite clearly the breakpoints. You can hear that this is from I'm Not in Love if I do this. It's very interesting how the guys in 10cc, which included Godling and Cream, right, who went on to have separate acts and stuff like that. And it's a beautiful song, and it's fascinating the way it was created. So let's maybe get into, instead of like yammering about that right now, let's get into user multi-samples. So let's do this. Let's go into, I'm going to right click here to get the utility menu. You can right click almost anywhere and get the utility menu, or you can click this little box up here and go to user audio and go away because I'm not ready to load user audio yet. The user audio interface allows you to drag and drop audio files into Omnisphere, and it then converts them to an Omnisphere sound source. Now that's pretty cool. But the manual goes on to state that you can't create multi-samples. If you want to make something that like goes, all the way up and down the keyboard, well, use granular, because granular will work up and down the keyboard. And that's all fine and good. And then it goes on to say, well, you know, Omnisphere it's a synthesizer, not a sampler. But I mean, obviously, in the factory content, there's a ton of multi-sampled stuff, some with round robins, there's stuff with velocity layers in it. And it turns out that if we do a little research, we can build our own user multi-samples. I know I've said that 5 times now. Um, let's just grab some samples and like see how this works. One thing that is super cool in Omnisphere. Now I'm just in my in the Finder, the file browser, right? I'm on Windows. I'm running Omnisphere 3 in standalone mode today. It's not being hosted in DAW. It's also that time of year in San Francisco, friend, when it's like alternately cold and hot at different times of the day. And so like I'm wearing this hoodie, not just because we're hacking today, you know, and all good hackers wear hoodies. Um, it's also because it's sometimes cold in my apartment, but now it's getting warm. And so you'll probably see a costume change somewhere along the way in this video. Now, Keith, shut up. Talky, talky, talky. Like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content. Let's make some samples in Omnisphere. So, okay, I'm in a random like sample directory on the hard drive here. And let's just take some random samples. Actually, well, let's take these accordion samples. I think that's what accord stands for. Oh, stop that. Let's take these accordion samples. I'm going to copy them and I'm going to paste them into a different directory. There's a reason I'm going to do this. This is world instruments, accordions. These are probably not good samples, and so I'm going to delete them later. I just want to illustrate how this works. So you can actually take an entire folder of samples and you can drop it into this window. You don't have to do it one at a time. So let's take our accordions and just drop them into the user audio section. And Omnisphere is going to convert these to Omnisphere sound sources that will be single sample sound sources. Let's see if I click. There we go. There they are. They weren't finished processing yet. I've got autoplay on. And now, if I were to go to, let's just make a init patch. He's trying to say init patch, initialize patch. By default, this will have a synth oscillator, but we can change it to a sampled oscillator. And then we can navigate now to our user directories, user, and you'll see that Omnisphere, in just a second, as soon as it does it, it's made us a category out of that folder, world instrument accordions. And so now I can grab that's actually not uncharming, isn't it? And so Omnisphere, if the file names have a space and then the key, the root note defined, it will properly map this sample to where it should go on the keyboard. But of course, we're going to get a lot of like chipmunking and, you know, weird format distortion up and down the keyboard because there's only one sample. And so what happens on your file system when you do this is in your Steam directory, so wherever you told Omnisphere to install the Steam library, which is Steam is their silly name for the engine that powers Omnisphere and Trillion and things like that. If we dig down here into Omnisphere, there was a sound sources directory, and there's the factory ones, and then the user ones. And this is where your user sound sources go. So now we've got this World Instruments accordion folder. And then inside of that folder, there is a folder for each of the samples that we just imported. If we dig into this, let's see. This one sounded nice. D4. mean, it kind of transposes okay. And you'll note that Omnisphere respects the loop points. Now, the loop points have to be defined in the wave file. And so if you did have samples that don't have their loop points defined, you'd have to use something like SoundForge or write a little script or something to put that data into the wave file. I wish I kind of knew some accordion songs. I don't know any traditional accordion songs, though. I mean, I barely know how to play at all. Let's face it. Quit joking around, Keith. Quit joking around. So let's look at a chord D4. So there'll be a folder here, a chord D4. And this creates two files in it. So there's a chord D4 DB, which is a dot, that means database. So .db is database. And this is actually where the wave data goes. But there's also more information inside this file. And then there's another file called .zmap. And the zmap, as you might guess, it controls the mapping for the sample across the keyboard. Now, you might be wondering, if there's only one sample in a sound source, why would we need a mapping file for that, right? Because couldn't we define all the data in the DB file? And so this is what led me to discover the existence of the zmap file, is what led me to discover that you can make user multi-samples, even though this is not documented. Let's just double click it, and that's going to open it for me in VS Code. You could open this in any text editor, and if you look at this file, you will see that it's just XML. Now, an XML file it's a generic format for structured data. And if we examine this file, so we've basically got your standard XML header, we've got like a doc type declaration, like whatever, it's just your standard XML document. But then we've got this structured data. You can see that like opens and closes. So we've got instrument multisample. Oh, this is the definition of a multisample, right? It has a size parameter, and the size parameter does match roughly the size of the DB file. I think the size parameter is actually the size of the sample data. And by the way, I don't think that this is important. I don't think that Omnisphere really pays attention to this, but it does write this value. And then underneath instrument multisample, you see we've got another opening and closing set of structured data, multisample zone. Oh, so here we can define a zone for different multisamples, right? So if you're familiar with sound font format like SFZ, or authoring multisamples in Contact, you're familiar with the concept of a sample zone, or a multisample zone, as Spectrasonics has chosen to call it here. This would be where we define what velocity range this sample responds to, what its minimum and maximum key range is. And some of the parameters here are sort of strangely named, but we've got min pitch, right? So that's minimum pitch. We've got max pitch, and you'll see that min pitch is set to 0. So that's clearly like MIDI note 0. That if I went all the way down on my keyboard, this will make like a fart sound. You won't be able to hear that unless you got headphones on. So that's pitch 0. And then all the way at the top of the keyboard, right, we got the max pitch at 127. Right? Now, we also see the minimum velocity and the maximum velocity. These go from 1 to 127 by default. So what that tells us is that velocity 0 is defined as silent, right? So we're going from 1 to 127. There's 128 velocity values in MIDI. And then, so this is like what we would expect, right? From a standalone sound source that spans the keyboard. Then there's this kind of mysterious parameter called HitKind, and I'll talk about that a little bit. And then we've got a hexadecimal number for volume and a hexadecimal number for pitch. And And these are, I have discovered, these are basically multipliers, but they are in hex. So you could scale the volume of a multi-sample zone. You could change the pitch of a multi-sample zone. Practically speaking, this isn't that useful. And then there's this parameter called fixed velocity. I assume if this is one, I haven't tested this yet, but I assume if this is 1 or 0, that probably the thing doesn't respond to velocity, but with -1, it will the sample zone will respond to velocity if you have that hooked up like here. Let's just go like here, velocity on amp. I'm not entirely sure yet. I haven't fully explored this format. But there you go. And then inside of multi-sample zones, there are sound groups with names. I don't know what under kit session means. It's always set to 0 in these. Then there's another parameter called library name. I believe that this is actually indicating like a directory structure. And at first I thought that you could, if you're familiar with coding and file systems or like Unix, Linux, dot means here in terms of a directory structure. So, if we're in this directory, Omnisphere Python scripts, dot means this path. Like we're here. This is where we are. But I wasn't able to do anything with that. So anyway, then it says sampled instrument name, accord D4. And that corresponds to, right, the folder in which we find this database file. Okay? Now, it turns out that if you add other multi-sample zones and change like the min pitch and max pitch parameters, you can make user multi-samples. I guess we could even try this right now if we wanted to. I wrote a script to handle all this stuff for me. So I did originally do some manual like faffing around. But ultimately I just wrote a script to handle this. But let's open Accord. What did we open? So this is the D5 sample. So we opened Accord D5.zmap, and we can just I think we can take this zone out. Hold on. I gotta go somewhere else. I know this is not that interesting, right? Watching someone faff around with sample definitions, but it's really cool that this works at all. Let's go back up to user. Let's go to, I want to go to one of these other multi-samples I've built and look at its zmap so I get this right. So, see? So here's a user multi-sample now where I've got all of the samples from the I'm Not in Love Choir inside of one zmap file. And so let's see here. The multi-sample. Okay, so we do multi-sample zone. We copy the whole multi-sample zone. Got it. Now I remember. Okay, so we're going to take Accord D4 and let's just grab the multi-sample zone from Accord D5, right? So we're going to copy the whole thing between the start of the multi-sample zone and the end of the multi-sample zone, excluding the close of the instrument multi-sample. I will just copy that, and we'll go to Accord D4, and let's paste that here. Now, Keith, how are we going to be able to tell that this worked? I don't know. And I screwed up my multi-sample zone. X, we have to end. Spaces don't, extra line breaks don't really matter. Sound group with names, close the multi-sample zone. Okay, if we save this, we should now have, let's see. Ooh, we gotta adjust our min and max pitch ideally. So this one will go to, let's see. This is D4. What is the MIDI note number for D4? MIDI note numbers. Let's see, D4. We'll make like, let's see. Oh no, we want to go to just shy of D5, right? So we'll make it go to MIDI note number 73. Is that right? 73? Yeah. Okay, so MIDI note number 73. So this one will go from, whoops, that's not VS Code. We'll make min pitch go from 0 to 73. Oops. 73. And then we will make the D5 sample go from 74 to 127. Okay. Now, if I save that, let's see. Is this right? Is this right? I think it's right. If we save that and then we go back to our user audio section, now this button right here is refresh sound library. So we're going to hit refresh so that the it picks up those changes to a chord D4. Let's see if we can hear this and if I did this right. Now, if I didn't do this right, I'm going to have to delete this whole part of the video. So I hope that this works for me. And let's see, let's make sure we're hitting the right keys. One easy way to do that in Omnisphere is if we go into Quadzone, it'll show us what notes we're playing. So what did we say? We went to like D5. So that's where the split happens. And that's a different sample, right? That's different from the D. Hey, we made a user multi-sample. What do you know? Let's see. Actually, did we make a user multi-sample? Because there's one thing I forgot to do. It certainly did sound like it happened. But the other thing we have to do is we need to take the DB5, I think. Maybe I've made a new discovery here. What my script does is it actually copies the DB files into the multi-sample folder itself. So let's do that and refresh. Are you sorry you watched this video yet? Are you sorry about that? I'm starting to feel sorry I made it. All right, we'll go to user audio. Let's refresh this again. Do. Refreshing. We're refreshing. It's refreshing. All right. Let's just see what happens here. This is where the split will happen. I think we just made a multi-sample. I do believe we just made a multi-sample. Of course, it's hard to tell. Oh, well, you know, one way we could test this. Let's go back to user audio. Yeah, stop doing that. I'm not trying to import you. What? Stop it. Stop. What we can do is we can like cycle between these two. So let's see if the D5, where's D5? This should sound the same. Oh, it does. Oh yeah, see, listen. So there's the C that's below D4. So these sounds are different. But it's the same on the D. So we did in fact create a user multi-sample. So it's kind of that easy, right? You just make a new sample zone. Now there's a lot more to say about this, but there you go. Like no one has documented this. So when I was researching the zmap file and the omnisphere.db files, there is literally no information on the interweb about them. So nobody has ever, look, if there's a sound developer that is making sound libraries for Omnisphere that knows about this, they're not talking about it. But this is how you do that. You can just edit your zmap files. And we'll get a little fancier with this, and I want to talk about some of the other sounds that I've made. Oh, and also about varieties of noise. Like, so the reason that I did this is because I am taking my varieties of noise sample library and turning it into sound sources. I was like, boy, some of these sure would be good as multi-samples, and we'll talk about them more in the next segment. But as usual, I'm going to take a short break and I'll be right back. Okay, so we just demonstrated how manually we could create a multi-sample. Now that's not so impressive with this accordion sample, right? Although it's actually a nice sounding instrument. I will probably convert that. Um, we can do like, more advanced things like our friend Maurice White. Or, like the I'm Not in Love Choir. And now that the effects are off, you can hear the changes. The other way that this is very useful is if we let's go to all is if we want to make like a drum kit, right? So here's a drum kit. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. Is it the one I wanted? I don't know. Oh, I saved this with the wrong name. This is supposed to be an effects menu. So varieties of noise contains a bunch of little sound effects. And let me go to Quadzone so you can see that like I'm not cheating here. I did not use Quadzone to do this. There are in fact like 13 samples in this user multi-sample. And really what this was supposed to be, oh yeah, boy, I screwed everything up in this patch. This is actually sort of easy to do. And I wanted to have my effects on, and what I really wanted was not the Von effects kit, but the, let's see, Von modular drums. Von is varieties of noise. I'm in the process of making these little micro kits. And so the micro kits are little modular drum hits that I sampled. So, And so in addition to just, converting all of the samples in varieties of noise into Omnisphere format, I'm doing a little library of Omnisphere patches that utilize them. And so, there's a whole bunch of different stuff in here. Another thing that we can do, and right now, this particular sound, this particular sound just uses a single multi-sample sound source from one of the centered polygonal waveforms, which are part of KRC Mathwaves, of course. In KRC Mathwaves, they are wavetables, and as I mentioned in my original overview of Omnisphere 3, we cannot import our own wavetables. I feel like my volume's low. We cannot import our own user wavetables into Omnisphere 3. Much is the pity, but we can extract the waveforms from a wavetable and either use them as a single sample or as a multi-sample. This particular waveform is on E2, and it spans the keyboard okay. But it would be better to be sampled in octaves. And so I am going to take some of my favorite waveforms from KRC Mathwaves and turn them into multi-samples, which will essentially, because they're single cycle waveforms, they will essentially play back like a wavetable, but they won't be morphable, right? But there are peculiar waveforms like the polygonal series waveforms that have this unique sound. I guess if I turn off layer B, which is kind of a noise layer, these waveforms are very special, the polygonal waveforms. They sound like bells, but they don't have any inharmonic content in them. And they're structured in a very specific way. They like only have certain harmonics that follow the polygonal series. And in this case, it's the centered polygonal series, which is a slightly different mathematical concept. But they have a really beautiful sound to them. So, beyond the classic synthesis waves, there are other waveforms that have very unique sounds. And if you're interested in this topic, I've talked about it in the past. Go see my videos in my KRC Mathwaves playlist, particularly what can we learn from the basic synthesis waveforms and also polygonal waveforms redux. And we'll turn both layers back on again. You see, you hear, you can hear that I've added kind of this interesting little noise layer just to give us a little bit of like ASMR lo-fi-ness. And this is another sample, this shaker loop whoosh, that's from Varieties of Noise. So I'm going to be going nuts, making cool patches for Omnisphere 3. They'll be coming pretty soon. I don't know how long it might take me. I mean, the samples are all converted. I still need to make more multisamples. One thing is that I'm getting more and more sophisticated with the script that I'm using to convert things to user multisamples, including now it supports SFZ. So if I have an SFZ file, a sound font file, or I author a sound font file, which is one decent way to author multisamples, I can just convert it to a user multisample for Omnisphere. But this is it's quite a breakthrough. There's other things I've been doing. Here's a really pretty patch that leverages mostly samples from Varieties of Noise. I had a lot of fun with, let's just make a new patch. Part of Varieties of Noise is a sound library of recordings from the wave organ. So the wave organ is like this weird installation. And I don't have many multi-samples yet, do I? Although we do have this, actually. Let's see. Where is the velocity switch? I need to reauthor this. But here's a user multi-sample. That is it has velocity switching, and so at low velocities, it's just this tinkly water noise sound. And then if you slam the key, it's a hit. So it's kind of like a Foley menu in a way. And I need to build a bunch of multi-samples with these kind of sounds. But the wave organ is this weird, like, concrete installation that's out kind of on a little jetty in the San Francisco Bay. It's not far from where I live. That was built as part of the World's Fair. And despite the name, it doesn't make sounds that are like organ-like. It has these like concrete resonant tubes, and it like amplifies like noise from the bay. And so sometimes sometimes the noises are kind of tonal and percussive like this. and then it makes this kind of sound. And those kind of sound like seagulls in the background, but they're not. It's actually the squeaks produced by the wave organ. It's a really wild thing. And they're very interesting to use in synthesis, actually. And, especially if we... This one I love. And so I've used some of those in some like demo patches. Like here's a whole series called Water Temple. I mean, that's a great Rompler patch. Come on. And so this is using one of my noise sources that I call Enigma, and the Enigmas are noise run through a bank of resonators, and so they don't have a well-defined pitch center, and so they're enigmatic in that, what pitch are they? They'll work at a lot of different pitches. You can map them across the keyboard in very interesting ways. There's a factory sound source in here called Angel's Whisper that shows up in a lot of Omnisphere patches. And then, this is another wave organ thing. So you can just listen to it by itself. Oops. There we go. Placid, splashy playing loop. Well, those are placid, splashy plings, aren't they? And I'm using the granular engine here to like just get little parts out of it, right? And so, all together, it's just the easiest way is to select a new. There we go. You add effects to things and they can become really beautiful and musical. Couple of variations on there. Oh, now I'm making Water Temple face. It's lovely how that evolves over time. Sorry if I'm making you have to pee. Really cool, right? So anyway, that's what I've been working on. So this is made up of like 2 layers. This sample called Shimmer Taps, that's another noise sample that I'm running through the granulator, and then just a synthesizer oscillator. It's really cool. A lot of fun you can have with that. So anyway, that's coming soon. It's got I'm just not very far along yet. Did we do this one? I am going to throw just some like synth patches in there. The cool thing about this patch is it uses some of the new glide modes, and that's the thing I didn't talk about. in my previous video about Omnisphere 3. So there are these new glide modes. You've got like a linear mode that's always been there, and I think gliss was always there too. So glissando, right, is not a smooth transition, but it actually hits the notes. Yeah, if we were to change the glide time, you'd hear each individual note. In case you didn't know the difference between gliss and legato. But there's these modeled glide times too, right? So different glide curves. So for like the ARP Odyssey, the Minimoog, the OBXA. Pretty cool. I guess the other thing I was kind of wanting to address is like I had some comments on my first video, with people saying some of the usual stuff about Omnisphere. It's like, well, everything's drenched in effects, right? So like I can't really tell if the engine sounds good at all. Like, but it's very easy to turn the effects off in this patch, and it's I mean, it sounds great, right? The oscillators sound great. And it can sound harsh or it can sound pretty, right? Did I play this one? People also say, well, it's just a glorified rompler, right? But it's like, I mean, come on. Like, this is a beautiful sound. Again, there's one built-in like oscillator sound here, and then one of the factory sound sources, and then two of the sound sources from my own collection, Varieties of Noise. Great for all sorts of different types of music. Very interesting. And then again, of course, if you have like samples that you know and love, and if they're multi-samples, like given the technique I just showed you, we can now build user multi-samples. And so, we can do cool stuff like this. So this is both the Maurice White ooze. I need to get around to doing the Oz. And the I'm Not in Love choir. I guess we should talk about that just a little bit more. I made a mistake last week. I got to tell you. So I meant to, in my video about Omnisphere 3, well, I hadn't worked out the multi-sampling thing yet, but I had talked a little bit about iconic sounds that are in Omnisphere, right? That maybe they're overused, maybe they're iconic, they're easily identifiable, like Rusty spoke. But then there's also this sound from the 10cc track, I'm Not in Love. And the guys at Sampletekk, there'll be a link in the description, got access to the original master tapes to this track and the backing vocals. And so what the guys did is they recorded multiple tracks of vocals of just the guys in the band, like singing the required notes to do the chords for this song, like the individual sounds, the individual notes, right? And then they basically built their own analog sampler. They got a bunch of tape machines and they bounced those multi-tracked vocals down to a single track, and then they ran the tape loops around the studio using things like cardboard toilet paper tubes and stuff to serve as capstans, and then they played the individual notes, which were on individual channels of the console, as they recorded the track. This must have taken forever. It's a very, very interesting sound. And if you listen to, well, I'll put a link to a good version of 10cc's I'm Not in Love in the description. But you can also hear in that song, there's this kind of this constant noise. It's very, very low, but it would be sort of like this. Like if we went to, I don't know, if we turn the volume like way down, it's like just the sampled notes, and it's like always there in the background. Sort of sounds like this. I'm not hitting the right chord, but it's always there. And then what they did is they put a piece of masking tape like across the bottom of the faders that you couldn't like zero them out entirely. So there's always a little bit of this fizz that's all over the place. Very, very creative. And I remember as a child, like hearing that song for the first time. And I was like, what, oh, how do they do that? Anyway, the guys at Sampletekk like got access to those original recordings of the individual notes. Like they baked the tapes and made this sample library. Now this sample library is called INIL Choir, INIL. I'm not in love. Choir. It's built into like a contact instrument, but the individual wave files are in there and you can reuse them with other types of things. And here's how I messed up. So I was just checking on the price of it, and it's now $61.25. Very strange, arbitrary thing. I guess that's like $49 plus, like, I don't know, is that VAT tax or something? Um, anyway, I think I paid like $49 for it, like many, many, many years ago. But it was on sale last week for $6.13. And I meant to mention that. And so I'm sorry. I'm sorry you missed a deal. But anyway, if you want this sound, like it's actually kind of worth $60. Just to have a little piece of history. Anyway, go check that out. There'll be links in the description if you want to go there and get it. The other thing I was going to talk about a little bit is, so, one of the reasons I think that Spectrasonics doesn't allow you to build multi-samples is that like multi-sample authoring is a pain in the ass. And they have given us in the Quadzone feature a way to do, let's take a different, let's see, is this more like it? Yeah. So in the Quadzone feature, they have made it possible to like take a single Omnisphere patch and use the 4 layers like spread across the keyboard. So you can do pseudo multisampling kind of things if, say you've only got like, say, 4 samples that are spread across some octaves. I mean, that'll kind of work to give you a multi-sampled effect. Right? So down here at C3, I've got this kick. And then above that, there's just a synth oscillator. So you can do stuff like that now. But I'm a little surprised, actually, because all of these components, like, if you expanded this view, right? Like, if it was scrollable, you've got all the interface components that you would need to author a user multi-sample here, right? And then you just need a save button, and it would just need to do the same trick that I'm doing with my script, or as you saw me do manually, just build the multi-sample zones, which is it's not hard. But they just, I don't know, maybe they don't want to take questions about that, or, maybe they want to be free to change the format at any time. I'm not really sure. But yeah, it's like, this is almost a sample builder. I did want to talk about just, I think I already said it, but that authoring multi-samples is kind of a pain in the ass. And so as I started when I showed that mini kit, I am building kits, and, what I'm doing is like, I'm putting together like a list of the samples that I want in each kit. But, Excel is not really a fun way to like author samples. And also, this is a problem for things like Serum 2 as well, right? Like, so Serum 2 supports multi-samples. They've chosen to support the sound font format .sfz. But authoring SFZs is not fun. And there are no good modern tools except for one. So if you're into building multi-samples, I'm going to humbly suggest that you look into, let's get our browser up here. Go to Korg. Again, there'll be a link in the description. Go get Sample Builder. Now, Korg Sample Builder is for building multi-samples for the mod wave and wave state. But it's actually a generically useful tool for building multi-samples. And let's run it. Let's get it up here. Sample Builder. So Sample Builder is a nice GUI for authoring multi-samples. And like one thing you can do with it, let's go. Let's see. Oh, we can just grab our accordion samples again. I'm going to have to close down Omnisphere, aren't I? Yes, I am. Bye. Oops, that's not Omnisphere. Bye, Omnisphere. Bye. We're done with you for a second. And I'll probably have to relaunch Sample Builder. Let's just do that. Okay, sorry. One thing that's cool about Sample Builder is let's just take those accordion samples that we had. You can just select all, and you can drag them to the keyboard, and it'll do auto mapping based on the note numbers. But it'll also, if you don't have the note numbers in the file name, it will actually look for that metadata in the sample chunk of the files, and it does a great job of mapping. Let's see here. I probably am not controlling it. Let's see, preferences. Yeah, multi-poly. There you go. All right. Oh, this audio, that audio is not coming out of my, that's not going to my recording interface, was it? Oh, it's going to my speakers. Sorry, kids. Let's do that again. Here we go. Ah, now it's in my phones. And so when you're done building a multi-sample, and you can just drag the regions and you can select different keys and stuff like that. You can do all the stuff that you would need for sound file authoring, except that what's going to happen, we can do like save multi-sample as, oops, we have to enter a name. So this will be my world accordion. All right. And then I'll do file save as multi-sample. Let's see. Let's put it, we know to go here, right? Let's save it here. So it'll save it in this format called Korg Multisample. Now, Korg Multisample is a digital file. I guess it has some kind of XML components in it. And I don't personally know how to read and write this format, but the person who does is Jürgen Musgraber. And he's great. We'll link to his channel as well. He's like a plugin developer, and he has this thing called Convert with Moss. And Convert with Moss is like this fantastic kind of bulk sample converter. So you can convert things like from and to kind of any format, and that includes the Korg multisample format. So you can take Korg multisample format, convert it to SFZ, right, after having authored it in this nice environment, and then you'll have an SFZ that's actually compatible with Serum too. Similarly, that would give us an SFZ that would help us. I wrote a script. I will probably make my script available at some point in the future. It's not ready for prime time. It's still very much in development, and it's very idiosyncratic at the moment. But I will probably just make that available. Maybe open source. Maybe I'll throw it in with the scripts collection that's in KRC Mathwaves. So I'm not sure about that. I'm not much of an open source guy. But KRC Mathwaves is kind of my Uber product that kind of mostly gives you everything I do, unless it's something that took a lot of effort and then I make one of my cheap and cheerful products out of it. But anyway, there's a quick overview of how we can actually build user multi-samples in Omnisphere. There is another thing I should talk about real quick. Let's close this guy down. Bye. Buy Korg Sample Builder. Korg Sample Builder is free, by the way. You don't have to own a wave state or a mod wave to use it. It's just go get it. There'll be a link. Go get the 1.2.6 version. I don't know where the 1.2.7 version is, but if you install 1.2.6 and you run it, you can do update, and I think it'll find the 1.2.7 update. It's nothing you need to do like this kind of just simple sample mapping and then later convert to SFZ using Convert with Moss. But anyway, you can see what a pain in the butt this kind of stuff is. And I guess I didn't finish my thought earlier about Spectrasonics. I think the real reason that they don't document this stuff is I think they just don't want to be bothered with dumb questions from people who, are not multi-sample authors. But I've authored my share of multi-samples, and I like to be able to do it. Let's see. I wanted to talk about let's see. Let's just get something up to listen to. Oh boy, I'm all over the place today. Hey, like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content. If we look at let's look at that I'm Not in Love Choir again. So if we were to look at the that's not where I want to be. That's not where I want to be. If we were to look at the files for this, here it is. INIL Choir. If we look at the zmap file, there is one thing to note. There's this parameter called HitKind that I did mention before. I don't know what it is. I originally thought that actually every user multisample had the same HitKind value. Because when I imported varieties of noise, let's go get one of those zmaps. When I imported varieties of noise, everything came over with a hit map value of 60. So like, let's just grab a random noise. See, HitKind is 60 here. And so I originally thought that maybe HitKind equals 60 means this is a user sample. But I think it's actually part of the way, this is just a theory, part of the way that mutation works. So I think HitKind is a simple value that sort of classifies samples as being roughly the same, because even though like all the varieties of noise are just they're very short, or very noisy samples. Same thing with the wave organ. All of those are essentially noise. They seem to be, they're mostly unpitched. And so they all have HitKind 60. But then if you look inside like the individual multi-samples that make up the I'm Not in Love Choir, well, this low one is 55, this one is 57, this is 59, 60, and they kind of go up. So it sort of seems to relate to their pitch and timbre. And I suspect that this HitKind value is something to do with mutations and classifying the different sound sources as being similar to one another. I don't remember if HitKind is in the zmaps for Omnisphere 2. I think it might have been. But anyway, you do have to get that right, because if HitKind doesn't correspond to the HitKind that's defined in the DB file, your multi-sample will not play. That sample will effectively be missing. And it took me a long time to figure this out, because I imported hundreds of samples and they all had the same HitKind value. And I only discovered later, as I started bringing more custom samples in, that HitKind can vary. The other thing you can see is you can actually open up .db files. So we'll open this one in Visual Studio Code. Now, you can't open, or you can't get anything useful out of the .db files that are open anyway. So this is a binary file, but you can see that the DB files that are user files, there's kind of this XML stuff in here. So you can see that that we've got, let's see, we've got values like the name of the sample, right? And then, where the pitch can possibly go. Some of these have HitKind. So this one does not have HitKind in it. But it also there's a bass pitch value. See, this seems to be like unpitched, so it doesn't bother with the pitch value. But if we go into like the Maurice White DBs, here we go. Let's just grab one of these guys. Maurice 4G5. Yeah, open, show me. You can see that there is I'm not seeing it right now. I don't find hit type. Anyway, it's very strange. And there is actually there's like pitch data and stuff in them. I may not be opening this the right way. Well, I wanted to show you. Oh wait, is it down at the bottom? Oh yeah, here it is. Oh, sometimes it appears at the top of the file. But anyway, here's the here's the XML uh, section, and so you can see that there's this thing called bundle kind, right? And then there's a value for the bass note. Um, it's got like reference tuning information, stuff like that. Anyway, like my script can do things like rewrite bass note. Like you noticed that in that drum map, that like mini kit that I showed, those samples, were playing at their native rate, like on the assigned key. And so you can adjust bass note here to do that kind of trick. Um, and also, I haven't played with this yet, but you can see that there is this value for round robin sequence number. So we could probably work out how to author multi-samples that do round robin. Anyway, that's the little view into this. Maybe if people are interested in this, like I might document this further. I might like write up something and put it over on wavetables.lol so that other people have a reference. But anyway, if you're into this sort of thing, you can greatly expand Omnisphere's capabilities with user multi-samples. So there you go. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. It's your old pal Keith from wavetables.lol signing off. Be good. Talk to you later. Hey, you're getting a little handsy with my... Ow!
The Torment Nexus, a love story, coming to the Hallmark Channel this October.